Welcome, everybody, to the Advanced Selling Podcast, the longest running sales training podcast in podcast history. Solo episode. B. Neal here, flying solo without my friend Bill Caskey. We are powered here on the solo episodes by B. Neal by Blind Zebra's sales operating system, Blind Zebra sales operating system, BZSOS. We are in the midst of certifying people to run on this system. And so if you've got some interest, and remember, this is a corporate gig, so it's not like you individually get certified, but if you're in a sales org and you think, boy, I'd really love to figure out how Bryan at the Advanced Selling Podcast and Blind Zebra run their sales operating system, you want to figure out how to get certified, just go to blind-zebra.com, and get in touch with us about how to become certified for to be an operations coach in the Blind Zebra sales operating system. I'll timestamp this. We're in September of 2024, even though some of you may be listening to this in 2032. That's okay. We are actually filling our December certification class, which happens the first week of December. It's 3 days in Indianapolis, live at Blind Zebra World headquarters. I'd love to see some Advanced Selling Podcast listeners there. So again, just go to blind-zebra.com, and lots of ways to get in touch with us there. So super thrilled. So we have guests occasionally. Pretty rare. We get hit up for guests all the time. People are always saying, I want to be on your show. I want to be on your show. And my guest today didn't say that. We invited her on our show. And it's also awesome because this is triple whammy here. One, I really wanted her to be with us. Number two, she is a former Blind Zebra client. And number three, she's an awesome human and one of my favorite people on the earth, and I consider her a friend. Please welcome to the Advanced Selling Podcast, Liesel Mertes. Hi, Liesel.
I'm so glad to be with you, Bryan.
This is awesome, isn't it? Isn't this fun?
This is.
I'm going to say, so, there's an age thing with this comment. I'm too young to be your dad. Kind of okay to be your big brother. But I'm going to say, because you're a client, and I've seen you literally start your business from almost the beginning. I am so freaking proud of what you've accomplished in such a really short time. It just makes me really happy to see the success you're having with such an important topic, which we're going to get to in a point. But I just want to say that out loud because you're just an awesome human. And it's just been great to watch. You just do your thing. It's really awesome. So
thank you. I receive it. And I'm sure we'll talk more about what this thing is that I actually do, but especially in my evolution as a solopreneur, I realized that I was doing thought leadership, I was speaking, I was booking gigs, but a lot of what I was also doing, especially at that stage, was selling. And there were aspects that I really needed to grow in. So I pull from my BZ toolkit all the time. I think it's why people want to buy from me, and don't think I'm a pushy jerk. So thanks.
You're not at all. I love it. And I even got some of my stuff back to me when we were trying to do a gig, and you're like, working me through the economics. I'm like, damn, Liesel, you're like, what have I helped you create here, right? Really great to see. So now let's get to the point. So one of the Blind Zebra sales operating system guiding principles is empathy. And as I have developed the program over time, I had these guiding principles. There started with 3, then there were 7, then there were 8, and I added 2. The last one I added, which is so interesting for me to reflect on this. The last one, and there's some cool things, abundance, detachment, attention, these things as a client, was empathy. And as I watched the world go, I thought, the world needs this, number one. Bryan Neal needs this more than anything. But salespeople and sales leaders need to understand and tap into this concept of empathy in their day-to-day work life. And you are an empathy workplace consultant. That's what your firm does, correct?
That right? Is.
It's good. I've been practicing that. So I want to start just with your story, since this is one of our guiding principles. And this is one of those deals where I'm more of a student than the co-host here. And just talk just a little bit about your story, how you got, because I don't know too many people who, when they're, a little girl says, what are you going to be when you grow up? And you're like, I'm going to be a workplace empathy consultant. Like, who wouldn't want to be that? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So how did you get into this business anyway?
Yeah. When I was a little girl, I wanted to be either the president of the United States. So we're in election season. If you're looking for an alternate candidate, that was one of the things that I was really into now that I'm over 35. No, actually, this work came to me. It came from some of my own shortcomings. I'll tell 2 little vignettes. One was, I remember, because I'm actually someone who has a high value for efficiency and getting things done. And I can remember being back from college and I'm there with my mom, and she was sitting on the board of this school. It was going so badly. And she was telling me, we were just catching up, and she's telling me how hard it is. And I respond out of care for her. But well, have you ever thought about this? And maybe that person made that, jumping right into this fix it Frank modality that I talk about. And she just went silent. And I looked over, and she was crying, and she didn't talk to me for the whole rest of the trip. And I remember even then, I think one of the best things I bring to this work is a great capacity for observation and self critique. I was like, that went really badly. I was trying to help her, and that was terrible. And I reflected on that, and I thought, "Oh, you know what? I love her and I care about her, and I'm just assuming she knows that, but I think she really would needed to have heard that. She would have needed me to say before she could hear any of my good ideas, she probably wanted me to say, 'That's really hard, and it sounds like you're trying really hard.'" And even just the strategizing part of me from that young age was like, I think I'm going to try a different tactic and see if that works because I care about her. So there was that, but where it really came at just a gut level of shaping my career trajectory was I was in an MBA program at the Kelly School of Business. I had two small children at home. I say yes to Kelly, found out a week later I was unexpectedly pregnant,
Mm.
thought I'm competent, I'm a multitasker. That's okay. We can swing this. I've got a good partner. Found out at my 20-week scan that our daughter, Mercy Joan, had a neural tube defect. What that meant was they didn't know she had this large fluid filled sac on the back of her skull. They didn't know if they could operate on it. There's just this wide variety of outcomes. So, we have all of this apprehension. We're meeting with hospice, we're meeting with neurosurgery. Mercy was born. She lived only 8 days
Mm.
before she died. Um, it's so many things in my story. I'm trying to be a partner, a parent, a student, a professional, and I realized that I wasn't just ready to bounce back or be resilient after a couple of days off. And there were some people that were great at giving support, and there were some people who were terrible. And also programmatically, it caused me to observe. I was in this very expensive 2-year program all about minting people leaders. And I realized we're not talking about this in a single class period, how we help people through their disruptive life events or in the midst of our own as sales leaders, as managers. So that was the seed of what has become down the line the work that I get to do of talking about human centric skills like empathy as just that. They're skills. You can and you should be growing in them, just like that watershed moment that I had in the front seat of the car with my mom of going, this isn't getting me where I want to go. So what can I do differently?
Yes. Gosh, I've never heard both of those stories. I've never heard the detail of Mercy. The
Hmm.
that level of
Yeah.
detail, I should say. I didn't know, how long she lived, and I didn't know what the situation was. I didn't know you were in MBA school, and I've known
Yeah.
you for a long time. And so it's really, it's good to hear. That's one of those things I always say, and I've not lost a child, so I can't get there.
Mm,
And I can't the phrase I use is that you're a from that point forward, you're
mm,
like it's like a different human. Like you're, the word dead on earth is not what,
mm.
but it's like there's this part of you that's just off. It's just, and you're just in waiting
Yeah.
to, that sort of thing. So and I now picturing you going to class after,
Yeah.
right? And everyone's like, "Oh, hey, Liesel," or "I'm so sorry to hear about your loss."
Well, and it happened over spring break, and not everybody knew. They just knew that I was pregnant. I was really pregnant heading into spring break, and then I wasn't.
Right.
And yeah, so some people thought that I just had a beautiful baby at home, and there were
Yeah.
all kinds of iterations. We're a grief adverse culture.
Oh,
I,
right.
I encourage people like don't beat yourself up too much. You weren't trained for this. You didn't have touchstones within your family or
Yeah.
culturally in how to be able to deal with this. We have happy meals, and when we ask people how they're doing, we expect that like the worst you're doing is still fine. I'm fine.
Right. We
Yeah.
we invented the Lego movie where everything is awesome, didn't we? I
Everything
mean,
is
everything
awesome
is awesome. We have Happy
all the
Meal.
time.
It's a sunshine day. Where are my Brady Bunch fans? Come on, I'm dating myself now.
Well, and the reality, especially coming back to what the work of Blind Zebra is, this is true in our own lives. If we
Mm,
look at the nuance of how we have to show up, even before this episode, we kicked it off, and I got a kid with a broken pinky right now, and there's just it like he'll be fine, but it's doctor's calls, it's all those things, and then you're still showing up. And that is also happening on the other side of your selling conversations, both their emotional world and how they feel about their needs and the product, and the life events that inform how they show up. And how can you tune into that wavelength
mm.
in a way that makes you better for all the human relationships you're a part of, but also better at sales?
Yeah, that's good. You're good transition, Liesel. I'm impressed. Way to go.
Yeah.
It's like you've done this before. So let's go there. Let's go to the sales thing. So here is as a sales coach, or not, almost not a coach anymore with this operating system, but an observer and a participant. Things that I observe. I observe salespeople bitching about their clients a
Mm.
lot. Well, they don't get back to me. Well, they don't tell me the truth. And even there's a coaching program that says, buyers lie. It's a mantra that they have.
Yeah.
Buyers lie. And I'm sitting here going, that's not a good energy to take either. You know what I mean? If
Yeah.
buyers lie, they're going to lie to you, then they're going to lie to you again. They're not all these things. And I'm thinking, these buyers are doing the best they can too. They're just trying
Right.
their deal, right? And so, but we only have our side of it to start with.
Yeah.
So talk about how empathy. So I'm now talking to the salespeople. So and they've got their own stuff in
Right.
their life going on too. How does all that, if you were coaching a salesperson, how would you coach them from preparation going into a call to in the call to be better at empathy? And I use the word better at on purpose because
Yeah.
I think there's this thing like it's a binary thing we hear. You need to be more empathetic or you need to be empathetic. It's
Right.
like you are or you're not. I'm like, it's a little more complicated for me. So just talk about
Yeah.
the salesperson relationship with the buyer and how to coach them on how to progress their empathetic muscles.
Right. Well, let me, as a launching point, give an example from when I was in a Blind Zebra coaching combine, because there's a portion of the time that's set aside each time for group wisdom to speak
Yeah.
into a situation.
Okay.
And there's a guy who tees it off from the front, and he was talking about stalled out sales deal, and stalled deals stink. I'm in the room with a lot of, I'm the only workplace empathy consultant in the room. There's a lot of salespeople.
Yeah.
And he's talking, and he's giving all the structural dynamics of the deal. I've invested this person, I've seen them, they're giving me all the signals. We're talking just nuts and bolts
Yep.
dynamics. And he mentions in passing that this guy also, he has switched firms, he's involved in a lawsuit with his prior firm about a conflict of interest, and if he's gone through, and also he thinks he might be in the middle of a divorce. And so it's just kind of noted, and we're just troubleshooting as to why this person is not getting back to you. And I'm a little tentative because I'm not full-time salesperson. But in the midst of it, I kind of raise my hand and I go, "Hey, it sounds like he kind of has a lot going on. He's getting sued. It seems his marriage is falling apart. And just to throw it out there, what would it be like if for your next outreach, instead of, doing all the pivots that we do of creating a deadline or all of that, you acknowledge, hey, it seems like this is a term that I use for my work, disruptive life events. You can
Mm,
say that or some seems like maybe you have a lot going on right now, and this has just dropped in priority. I want to respect that. I realize there's a lot of emotional energy going on. Is it best to just wait until the new year to talk about that? And the whole, it's not that I'm so brilliant, it's that we weren't talking on that wavelength. And the person from the front and the whole room goes, I've never thought of that. We were so in the tactical aspect of what was going on that you almost miss the wider angle view.
mm,
So what are some of the ways, high level, that empathy comes into selling? Well, one, empathy has already been embedded in your product design. If you're selling something that you care about, like this is something that marketers think a lot about. How does this energetically connect with a need? Where's the person at? It's just that we miss a lot of that intention in trying to meet numbers. And that fix it frank. Sometimes I'll teach about empathy avatars. They are postures that we take on in the midst of not getting what we want or being confused, seeing and the fix it mentality of like, I've got a solution. I've got to tell you what to do. People get turned off to that immediately, and we're not careful with it, and we don't quite know why they shut down. So just as a starting point, those are some aspects of the ecosystem. And what does it mean that the goal isn't just to diagnose where you're falling short, but what does it mean to do a fix it frank pivot differently?
It's so good. And it's so funny. We're our own worst enemies in this game. We've been taught, I mean, there's a company called solution selling. I mean, it's
Right,
in the name, you know, you got to solve a problem. What, you know, because it went from feature product benefit stuff from back in the 80s. Now we're solution based, we're solution based, we're solution based. So we're just hammering salespeople with coaching
right.
and training and framework and energy of like, I'm going to fix you, fix it, fix it.
Yeah,
And guys going through a divorce and getting sued, it just sit there, man. Like,
right.
how you doing, bro? You know, it's like,
Yeah,
and you're going to be the best sales person that guy saw in the last 2 months, right? You know,
right. Well, and I feel like you and your team really embody this energy. We live in the same city, so I get to see you in
yeah,
real time and socially, but also seeing is just to be able to show up as the person that you wanna be, not just a numbers person. And people buy from people, and the reality is they also buy because you understand their problem, not because they fully understand your solution. And a lot of it is that move towards I'm forgetting. Is curiosity one of the values? But
yes, you know, yes, you
yeah,
have,
curiosity of just leaning in, and that's a big part of empathy as well. They go hand in hand to say, there's probably more going on here than I see at first glance. And I want to be attuned to asking those questions. In the sessions that I do interior to companies or even, our empathy at work trainings, a big question is just tell me more about that. I find I use that all the time in both my personal life and also conversations. Tell me more. I mean, so often in selling, we get just a hint of a little thing we want to latch onto, and we want to just jump right in and use it as a springboard. Tell me more about that. What's
yes,
going on?
yes, and we tend to filter the business side of that, and we forget that the person is a person, and they could have
Right.
anything going on in their life. They could be on a PIP, on a
Yeah.
performance improvement plan. They could be
Yes.
have just gotten chewed out by their boss for cost. You
Right.
know, right? All that shows up as the in our buyers' behavior and energy, and we just blow right through it. We just blow
Well,
right.
and there's another part that isn't so much about the success or meeting your numbers. It's also about protecting some of your energy as a salesperson of, people buy or don't buy for reasons that you will probably never fully know. And to be able to practice, again, that detachment from the outcome of saying the energy they showed up with, like, yes, I want to learn, I want to get better. Maybe I did show up as whatever, but I can remember there was um, I was talking with a person from a really big brand, well known, loves my stuff, wants to talk. We have that. And then they're just gone.
Mm,
And you go through the steps, why? And there's also a question of like, that would have been a great deal. I would have loved to have worked with that company. And 8, 10 months later, just got a note on LinkedIn. And this woman was, I was going through some really hard times. I've taken
oh,
steps away from work. I've gotten the counseling I needed. I think with both my boys going to college, it was just overwhelming.
oh,
And that was also a lot of emotional energy, even though I was trying to practice detachment, that I was like, why? What do I
yeah,
need to learn? What is that? And to be able to release them to their journey and also just, claim your protective space. It's
yeah,
not it's often not about you, and you don't always get that back end of the story, but
yeah,
lots
right.
of times it's there.
That's so interesting. Yeah, what you were doing in a very healthy way, some of us do it in an
Mhm.
unhealthy way, is when we don't know the story, we make up this story.
Right.
Well, she must have this, or I must have turned her off, or I must have
Yep.
said, or we do this stuff, or they're this or that, and I'm like, we don't know that we're making
Yeah.
a bunch of assumptions there. So let's jump now to the leaders. And I love
Mm.
taking and we don't have time. I wish we did. Liesel has these. She talked about these empathy avatars, and they
Yeah.
represent. Fix It Frank is a picture, a person who wants
Mhm.
to fix everything. So let's go to the leadership side, because we got some leaders listening now. Salespeople like, I'm going to forward this to my boss because my boss. That's what goes on, and sales leaders are so into numbers. Need the calls, need the numbers, need the calls, need the numbers, and they have very little awareness. Most of them I work with, and I work with a bunch of them. We have 60 of them in a peer group, and they're pretty evolved. A lot of them
Mhm.
that aren't, just have no awareness to what this pressure does to others. And so
Mm.
let's talk about how sales leaders can take your work and your practice into their game to make them better leaders.
Oh, it's such a good question because if you have any sort of managerial responsibilities, you know the reality that you're trying to optimize processes and get people to do their best work, and people are messy and they are coming with this first step. To practice empathy, you have to exist within a culture of trust and psychological safety, which, those are like buzzy words that exist in the ecosystem. But the data shows, I mean, Google, who they're masters at data, that was the number one differentiator when they did a wide scale study of what separates truly innovative, productive businesses from all the rest is
Mm,
psychological safety.
mm,
Let's bring that down in a really like sticky sort of a way. I think a great way to start, you want to get the information. Actually, you want to know the stuff that's going on for your people. That doesn't mean that your workplace becomes a counseling session, which people see it as so one or the other. Either we never talk about feelings or
that's
I'm
right.
a counselor. Really, there's a lot of space in between. Lean
Yes.
into it.
Yes.
Stoplight check-in is one of my favorite sticky tools.
Uh-huh.
There are other types of check-ins, numbers. I just like it for its understandability.
Yeah.
Top of every meeting, how is everyone showing up? What energy are you bringing? Red, yellow, green.
Yeah.
When people share, that's a great cue to follow up later on. If you're
Mhm.
red or yellow, hey,
Mhm.
Bryan, you share that you were red. Is there anything that we should talk about? Is there anything we need to redistribute this work? It is an invitation to more conversation. You should not do it in the middle of a group meeting. Don't be like, tell
What's wrong?
me all about your yellow, John.
Yeah.
Spill your
Why are you
beans.
red? Let's start with Liesel. Why are you red, Liesel?
Yeah. So it cues up follow-up, and then especially if you're the leader, this is also a great place to practice, non-leaky sharing
Mm,
to add a little bit more humanity. If we were doing this at the top, I would have said, "I'm yellow. My
yeah,
15-year-old chewed
yeah.
me out and told me I was the worst this morning, and we got a broken pinky," and it's just kind of a lot to recalibrate, and what that does is it invites people to say, "There's a place for this at work. We also can acknowledge this." And the leaky part is you don't wanna, like, process your marriage falling apart. "I am red
Right,
because my partner's the worst," and they
right,
never and it all goes back to their mom.
right,
So
right.
the appropriate level of humanity. But that's a great place to start. And then understanding your avatar, just a quick note. You might be cheer up Cheryl, always looking on the bright side, or a buck up Bobby. It's all about the task. And the more you have that language and awareness, the more you can know where you tend to go off the rails. For me, I'm a commiserating Candace or Fix It Frank.
Oh,
I'm going to
really?
be quick to jump in with my own story. Oh,
Yeah.
oh, Bryan, that's so sad. You have a kid in the hospital. I've had a kid at Riley. It's the worst. And I've centered myself in the story. So that self-awareness is helpful.
That's fantastic. And what I love about what your work, Liesel, more than anything else, those of you listening to this, I'm going to tell you how to get hold of Liesel here in a second. When people first hear, and I did, you're an
Mhm.
empathy workplace consultant. I'm a sales dude. I'm a scoreboard guy. I'm get
Yeah.
after. I didn't know you from Adam. I'm like, oh God, here we go. Right.
Uh,
Sit around and
yeah.
talk about and I couldn't have been more wrong.
Mm,
You take this stuff that at its core is really can be deep, emotional, everything else. You make it usable,
mm,
understandable, and tactical, and it works, which I
hmm.
just admire about what you do. It's just so great. You've done such a good job, but what can be really complex, make it super simple.
Mm.
And I love that it's almost like yoga. Like I'm not a
Yeah.
practice yoga. My wife is. It's so they say yoga is a practice.
Yeah.
You're never done with yoga. You never like, oh,
Right.
I got that pose. Every day is a new day, and
Mhm.
every yoga pose is a new pose. And that day you feel the pose away, and then you feel
Yeah,
a different. And so to me, empathy is a practice.
it is.
A practice. It's not a thing you do. You don't figure it out. It's a constant practice, and it ebbs and flows and goes up and down, in and out. So I love the tactics, the stoplight thing. Those of you listening, um, if you're a manager, Liesel just
Mhm.
gave you the answer. Okay.
Mhm.
Once a month, just do this. Just check in. How's everybody today? Just
Yeah.
energetically, red, yellow, green. And just that space alone as a leader makes people go, huh, this is
Yeah.
nice. Right. Even if you're green, it's okay. I'm green. It's really, really awesome.
Mhm.
And then it does all the other things too, the cue to get
Yeah.
people to talk about it. I love you said the not leaky, because
Yeah.
people like you said, people gossip or whatever. So fantastic, guys. Good. Okay, we gotta do this again. That was fantastic. So
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan. Advanced Line
Could
Pop.
I add just one quick note?
Oh, please. I love it.
Uh, Perfect is the enemy of progress in this stuff, which
Mm,
is a different way of what Bryan just said, especially in, deeper stuff, or you might think like, "Oh my gosh, I did that fix-it thing to a client just recently," or to someone in my home who I really care about. Making steps to co-create the cultures we wanna be a part of is really important. That sounds like acknowledgement and a new direction, like, "You know what? Bryan, I realized you were sharing with me last week, and I jumped right into fixing you, and I'm working on that. I don't wanna do that anymore. I just wanted to note that. I'm really gonna try to give more space."
that is
So, it
awesome.
can it can
Hear
be
that?
that easy, and
Literally.
I still do it all the time,
No.
and I teach this stuff.
It's so funny too. Richard Bach says in his book Illusions, we teach best what we most need to learn. Isn't that a great
Mm,
phrase? We
that's
teach
good.
what we most need to learn. Um, let's see. That was fantastic. And I didn't know what is it? Cheer up, Cheryl?
A cheer up, Cheryl.
Cheer up, Cheryl. Yeah.
They're
I'm like,
great.
it's fine. We'll get through this. It's okay. We can do this.
At least,
Hey,
at least.
we're going. Yeah, yeah. I'm that.
Mhm.
I'm like optimistic. Like we'll get through it. I know it's hard now, but we'll get through that. You get through
Mhm.
everything. There's nothing you can't handle. I'm that guy for
Yep,
sure. I've always known I've done that. I
yeah.
didn't call it a thing. So I love
Yeah,
that.
you can be a cheer up Charlie.
But
They're
sure,
only
can
chosen
I
for
can
alliteration. Yeah, it's not gendered. Cheer up
allowed.
Charlie.
Thank you. I appreciate that. As a Gen Xer, especially.
Yeah.
Okay, so how do the Advanced Selling podcast listeners find you? And you've got an event or two coming up that might be interesting to
Yes.
our listeners. So tell us about that.
LieselMertes.com is the repository of all things Handle with Care Consulting. A couple of things that we do. I do a lot of work interior to companies, whether that is through standalone trainings or bundled engagements that have a residual of coaching. We also found that there was a lot of interest in people saying, I just want to get my toes wet. So we do the Empathy at Work event. Our next one is coming up October 9th, 2024. We've got two different offerings. So there's maximum flexibility with half day scheduling. And what I'm really excited about launching, in addition to what we already do, is an online version of the empathy avatars, how to create cultures of care and empathy at work. That drops in the middle of October. And we're really excited, especially for some of the big disparate clients that we serve, to see that utilized from all corners of our wide world, because we can all use a little bit more empathy.
Can't we though? Spell Liesel Mertes for people.
It's worth doing, isn't it?
Yeah,
LIESEL MERTES
a lot of vowels. A lot of vowels.
.com.
You'd be a
A
good
lot.
name if you were like super famous, like you're pretty famous now. You get super famous. You'd be on
Yeah.
one of the things on Wheel of Fortune.
Yeah, like
Wheel of
Wheel of
Fortune. You
Fortune.
got all
You
vowels.
just know you've made it if you're on Wheel of Fortune, no
100%.
doubt. May it
Can
come for us both.
the truth. Spell it one more time.
LIESELMERTES.com.
That's where you go. And so, and Liesel has online, like virtual type programs that people, so it doesn't matter where you live. If you don't live, we both happen to live in Indianapolis, Indiana. If you're around here, you live in Cincy, St. Louis, come to this event October the 9th. Is that
Yes.
right? October the 9th, it's live.
Hey, let me offer also for listeners, I'm going to
Yeah.
extend to you a special discount. If you
Okay.
use alumni, all lowercase 2024, you
Okay.
get a half price ticket and a
Half
free
price.
guest.
Damn.
Yeah, we've priced this for accessibility this time around.
I
So
like.
$99 down to 49, and you get to
Oh,
bring a free guest.
dang.
Alumni
Okay.
2024, all lowercase.
Lowercase. Okay, that's really great. I didn't know that. Thank you for doing that for the Advanced
Yeah.
Line Podcast listeners. If you're a leader, bring your team to that. I will tell you too, again, self-purported. I'm working the National Football League. I'm in a testosterone business, not a touchy-feely world. Sales, and when you hear this subject, if you judge it like I judged it, you are wrong. I'm just telling you. If you judge like, oh, this is soft, this is not soft. And the way Liesel goes about it, and then you get to know Liesel, she's not really wired that way either. It's a compliment, but
Time to do empathy, guys.
yeah, she was a rower in college and scuba diver and all that. She's like gets after it
Mhm.
type of human. So it is very practical, tactical stuff on a really important subject that we all need to get better
Mhm.
at. So you're the best. I thank you so
Thank you,
much.
Bryan. I love
So,
sharing empathy also at the heart of, the attributes of blind zebra.
isn't it though? It's one of our guiding principles. So if you want to learn more about how to become certified in the Blind Zebra Sales Operating System, go to blind-zebra.com. We've already had some listeners come through. We had some Advanced Link podcast listeners in our last certification class. Time stamping this. This is September of 2024. Right now, we are holding our next class in December 2024. So time is upon us. But if you want to learn how to get certified, go to blind-zebra.com. And as always, we thank you for listening for the Advanced Link podcast. See you.